In Africa, they say, the child who is not embraced by the village will one day burn it down to feel its warmth. But sometimes, the child does not burn the village. Sometimes, the child builds it. This is the story of Chinedu, a boy with nothing in his hands, but everything in his heart. The morning sun rose over the tin rooftops of Iagon. The streets smelled of roasted corn, smoke, and yesterday's rain. Children ran barefoot, chasing old tires. Bus conductors shouted at the top of their lungs. And in the middle of this chaos was a boy, barefoot, thin, clutching a tray of pure water sachets. His name was Chinedu. At only 10 years old, he carried a weight far heavier than his small frame should bear. Every sachet he sold meant food for the evening. Every step he took was a step of survival. Pure water. Buy pure water. Only 10 naira, said Chinedu. But many walked past. Some glanced with pity. Others with scorn. Still, the boy's eyes carried something unusual. A hunger deeper than food. That evening, Chinedu returned to the little shack he shared with Mama Ifoma, his grandmother. The room was small, the zinc roof leaking, the floor bare. She sat on a wooden stool, her wrinkled hands busy peeling cassava. "Naem, you have returned. Did you sell everything?" said Mama Ifoma with a smile. "Not all, Mama. People. They didn't buy much today," he replied shyly. Mama Ifoma's smile did not fade. She pulled him close, placing his tiny head on her lap. Mama Ifoma softly said, "Do not worry, my child. A river does not flow in one day. Even small drops become streams. And one day, those streams become oceans." Chinedu listened quietly, his stomach empty, but his heart strangely full. The next day at school, the children laughed at him. His uniform was torn, his shoes gone long ago. "See Chinedu. Always hungry, always dirty. You think you can ever be like us?" said one of his classmates. The classroom echoed with laughter. Chinedu bent his head, his ears burning, but his hand never stopped writing. His pencil was short, almost finished, but he pressed on. He had no lunchbox, no money, no shoes. But his eyes, they never left the blackboard. For while the others mocked, he dreamed. And dreams, like fire, do not need shoes to burn. One afternoon, after hawking, Chinedu stumbled upon a small public library near the market. The doors were old, the shelves dusty, but to him, it was paradise. A girl about his age sat in the corner, her nose buried in a book. She noticed his wide eyes. Adeze smiled softly. "You can come in. Books don't bite." Chinedu shy, and whispered, "But I don't have money." Adeze laughed softly. "It's free. This place is for everyone." And for the first time in his life, Chinedu held a book. Its pages smelled of dust and possibility. That day, a friendship began, and a seed was planted. That night, back in the shack, Chinedu read by the weak light of a kerosene lamp. Rain leaked from the roof, soaking parts of the floor. His stomach rumbled loudly. He pressed a hand to his belly, whispering, "Don't mind me. I will feed you tomorrow. Tonight. My mind must eat." Some wars are not fought with swords, but with persistence. And each word he read was a victory against despair. Days passed. Hunger became his companion. Sometimes, while teaching younger children under a mango tree, his stomach growled loudly. The children laughed. "Don't mind my stomach. It is just reminding me that knowledge is sweeter than food," Chinedu said, smiling softly. But at night, alone, tears slipped quietly down his cheeks. Chinedu whispered to the darkness and said, "God, if you can hear me, don't let this hunger kill the dream inside me." And somehow, every morning, he rose again. dusty feet, empty stomach. But his heart is still burning. One evening, Mama Ifoma found him surrounded by children, scratching letters in the dust. She watched silently until they dispersed. Then she called him aside. "Chinedu, do you know what you're doing?" Mama Ifoma asked. "I'm only teaching them what little I know, Mama," Chinedu responded. Mama Ifoma touched his head gently. "No, my son. You are planting trees whose shade you may never sit under. That is true greatness." Her words sank deep into his young soul. But not everyone celebrated. Some adults scoffed. "Book no day but soup for pot. Why waste time writing in sand?" One day, Chief Okoro, the wealthiest man in the area, arrived with his son, Obina, dressed in polished shoes and neat uniform. Chief Okoro mocking Chinedu. "Look, Obina. See your mate, teaching nonsense in the dust. This one will always remain in the mud. You are the real future." Obina smirked. The children shrank in silence. Chinedu's jaw tightened. He stood and said firmly, "Sir, dust is where seeds are planted. One day, this dust will grow a tree greater than you can imagine." The crowd gasped. Chief Okoro's face darkened. But before he could retort, Mama Ifoma stepped forward, brandishing her wooden spoon. "Okoro, since when did knowledge become shameful? You have wealth, yes. But what will wealth mean when your children know nothing of compassion or wisdom?" Mama Ifoma said angrily. The chief scoffed and stormed away. The children clapped. And in that moment, Chinedu realized, he was no longer just a boy. He was a leader. One Saturday, Mama Ifoma took Chinedu to the riverbank. Women washed clothes, children splashed in the water. Mama Ifoma called. "Chinedu, listen well. The river is not proud because it is wide. It is proud because it gives water to the people. If God lifts you one day, let your life be like this river." Chinedu stared at the flowing current, his reflection rippling. He whispered, "Mama, I promise. If I ever rise, I will rise to carry others." Weeks became months. Chinedu's lessons under the mango tree grew. Children came with sticks, scraps of paper, anything they could find. He taught them not only letters but proverbs, stories, and lessons of life. Chinedu said to the children, "A bird does not fly with one wing. Education is the second wing that will lift you higher. Never forget that." The children clapped, their laughter ringing through the street like bells of hope. But fate always tests the dreamer. One night, Chinedu returned to find his only slate stolen, the small board he used to practice. His only treasure. Gone. He sank to the ground, clutching his chest and started crying. Why? Why must life take everything from me? But then, from a distance, he heard familiar voices. Children's voices. Chanting the letters he had taught them. A. B. C. Chinedu wiped his tears, stood slowly, and smiled through the pain. Even if the slate was gone, the knowledge was alive. It lived in them. And no thief could ever steal that. That night, under the dim glow of a street lamp, a barefoot boy understood truth the wealthy often forget. True wealth is not what you hold in your hand, but what you leave in the hearts of others. The mango tree had become more than shade. It was now a school, a sanctuary. Dusty letters written with sticks, laughter echoing like a hymn. One afternoon, as Chinedu taught, a stranger stood at a distance. It was Mr. Okk, a retired teacher from the next community. His hair was gray, his walking stick steady. He listened quietly to the boy's voice. Confidence. Patient. Inspiring. When the lesson ended, he stepped forward. "My boy, who taught you to teach like this?" Mr. Okk asked. Chinedu shyly lowered his eyes and said, "No one, sir. I just share what I know." Mr. Okeke studied him deeply, then smiled. "Young man, wisdom has no age. What you are doing is a calling. And those who answer a call never walk alone." Chinedu blinked, not fully understanding. But his heart felt warm, as though God himself had whispered through the old man's voice. But life was not kind. Hunger returned fiercer than before. There were days he could not walk to the mango tree. His knees trembled, his lips cracked. Mama Ifoma tried to share her own food, but she too had little. One evening, Chinedu lay weak on the bare floor. His eyes half closed. His body begged him to quit. Chinedu whispering softly, Maybe I am foolish. Maybe Chief Okoro was right. What is the use of all this suffering?" Mama Ifoma leaned close, her voice trembling but firm. "Naem, listen. Diamonds are made only under pressure. If you give up now, the world will never see the light inside you." Her words poured into him like water on dry ground. And slowly, the fire within flickered back to life. One afternoon, after lessons, little Adeze, the girl from the library, approached Chinedu shyly. She asked, "Chinedu, can you write my name on the ground?" Chinedu smiled and bent down. Carefully, he drew each letter in the dust: A, D, A, E, Z, E. Her eyes lit up. "That's me?" Adeze asked. "Yes. That's you. Your name can live even in the dust," Chinedu replied. Adeze looked at him strangely, as if realizing for the first time that the barefoot boy before her was no ordinary boy. From that day, the children began asking him to write their names too. And soon, the dusty floor carried not just letters, but dreams. But trouble never sleeps. One hot afternoon, Chief Okoro stormed back with Obina. He pointed at the children and said, "Stop this nonsense. You are filling their heads with rubbish. These children should be selling in the market, not wasting time scratching sand." The children froze in fear. Chinedu stood tall, his small chest heaving. "Sir, with respect. Knowledge is not rubbish. A market without wisdom is an empty market." Chief Okoro's face twisted with anger. "You dare talk back at me, you fatherless rat?" Before he could step closer, Mama Ifoma appeared, wooden spoon in hand, her eyes blazing. "Okoro, shame on you. With all your wealth, what have you built? A house of pride? This boy is building people. And people are greater than gold," said Mama Ifoma. The crowd murmured. Chief Okoro, red with fury, dragged his son away. But the seed of envy had been planted. And envy always grows thorns. 1 week later, the community gathered in the square. A government official announced a rare opportunity, a scholarship for one brilliant child to attend the city's best school. The villagers buzzed with excitement. Chief Okoro pushed Obina forward with pride. "This is our winner. Who else can it be?" But the official raised his hand. "There will be a test. The scholarship will go only to the most deserving." Whispers filled the air. Eyes turned toward Chinedu. Mama Ifoma squeezed his hand. "My son, this is your river. Step into it." On the day of the test, children gathered in the library hall. Chinedu had never sat for such an exam before. His heart pounded. His pencil shook. But then, he remembered the mango tree, the laughter of children, Mama Ifoma's words, the river. Slowly, he wrote, word after word, number after number. The questions were hard, but so was his life. And life had been his greatest teacher. Hours later, the results were pinned to the wall. The crowd pushed, eyes searching. And then, silence. On the top of the list, Chinedu. Gasps filled the room. Mama Ifoma's eyes overflowed. Adeze clapped wildly. But Chief Okoro's face hardened into stone. That night, under the dim light of a kerosene lamp, Chinedu whispered to himself. "Mama, my dream is beginning," said Chinedu. But in the shadows, Chief Okoro plotted. For some men cannot bear to see light shining where they expect only darkness. And so, while the boy dreamed of books and classrooms, the enemy of his destiny sharpened his knife. The city was nothing like the village. Tall buildings, noisy cars, lights that refused to sleep. When Chinedu arrived at the prestigious St. Mary's College, his heart raced. The gates were taller than any house he had ever seen. The children wore clean uniforms, carried shiny bags. He looked at his own faded shirt, his old sandals. His bag was stitched with thread. Some boys snickered. Who let the bush boy in?" one of the boys said. "Maybe he came to cut grass, not to learn," said another boy. Chinedu swallowed his pain. He whispered to himself, "Let them laugh. A lion is still a lion, even when it enters the forest quietly." The school library was bigger than the entire market back home. Rows upon rows of books, smelling of ink and paper. Chinedu's hands trembled as he opened one. He read. And the world opened. Stories of inventors, leaders, warriors, teachers. He devoured every page as though it was food. Sometimes, the librarian had to drive him out at night. "Boy, go and sleep." But to Chinedu, books were not paper. They were keys. And every key opened a door his mind had longed to enter. Back in the village, the children under the mango tree missed him. Mama Ifoma too. One afternoon, a letter arrived, torn at the edges, but filled with love. Chinedu wrote, "Tell my brothers and sisters under the tree, I have not forgotten them. One day, the dust we wrote in will become chalk on blackboards. One day, our dreams will have walls and a roof." Mama Ifoma read the letter aloud, her voice breaking, her tears falling onto the paper. The children cheered. They had not lost their teacher after all. But far away, Chief Okoro boiled with anger. His own son, Obina, had failed the exam. And now the poor orphan, the rat, had taken what he thought belonged to him. Chief Okoro swore. "As long as I live, this boy will never rise above me." He began to whisper lies in the ears of others, that Chinedu was a thief, that the scholarship was a mistake. His poison spread slowly, like smoke in the wind. One day, during assembly, the headmaster called Chinedu forward. A wallet had gone missing from a teacher's office. Fingers pointed at the poor boy. Murmurs filled the hall. "Of course it's him. He's poor. He must have taken it." Chinedu's hands shook. His eyes stung with tears. "I did not take it." But no one believed him. Not until the truth came out days later. The wallet was found in the pocket of another boy. The headmaster apologized. But the wound remained. Chinedu thought to himself, "This world does not see the truth of the poor until it is too late." Then came the darkest night. News reached the city that Mama Ifoma had fallen ill. By the time Chinedu returned to the village, the woman who had been mother, father, and shield, was gone. Her small hut stood silent. Her wooden spoon leaned against the wall. Chinedu collapsed by her bed, weeping. "Mama, you told me I was a river. Who will remind me now? Who will call me son?" The villagers gathered, whispering. Many held his shoulders. But grief is a lonely fire. That night, the boy who once had little, now had even less. But he remembered her words, "If God lifts you, be like the river." And with that memory, he stood again. Back at school, Chinedu began to notice someone watching him. A girl named Amara. Unlike the others, she did not laugh at his old sandals. One day, she found him reading alone. "You read like the books are your friends," said Amara. Chinedu smiled faintly. "They are. Friends do not mock you for being poor." Amara tilted her head. "Then allow me to be like your books." It was the first time Chinedu felt the warmth of companionship beyond the mango tree. Years passed. Chinedu grew in knowledge, but the memory of Mama Ifoma stayed alive in his heart. One evening, he found an old letter she had written before her death. Inside were these words: "My son, if you ever find yourself in rooms with leaders and rich men, remember the ground that once carried your bare feet. Never forget the dust, for it is in dust that God plants his greatest seeds." Chinedu pressed the letter to his chest, tears rolling silently. And he swore again. "I will not rise alone. I will rise with many." As his final year approached, an inter-school debate competition was announced. The winner would gain a full university scholarship. Chief Okoro, still bitter, pushed Obina forward once more. "This is your chance to prove that rats do not belong among lions." But fate had written another story. Chinedu stood before the judges, his voice steady, his words sharp as arrows. He spoke not just from books, but from life. From hunger. From loss. From hope. His closing words silenced the hall. "Education is not the privilege of the rich. It is the right of every child born under the sun." The crowd erupted in thunderous applause. And when the winner was announced, it was Chinedu. But victories bring both light and shadows. For while the boy's star rose higher, the darkness of envy still followed close behind. Chinedu entered university, a world larger than anything he had ever imagined. Lecture halls filled with hundreds of students. Professors with wisdom dripping from their tongues. But while many saw university as freedom, parties, wealth, influence, Chinedu saw it as duty. Every note he wrote, every book he borrowed, every night he stayed awake, he carried the village in his heart. He told himself every morning, "I am not here for myself. I am here for Mama Ifoma. For the children under the mango tree. For every barefoot child who dreams of holding a pen." But even here, his shadow followed. Chief Okoro, now older but not wiser, still carried bitterness like a wound that refused to heal. He used his influence to try and block Chinedu's progress. He whispered to sponsors, bribed officials, and spread rumors. Yet, like a stubborn flame, the boy refused to die. Chinedu would whisper in prayer. If men close doors, God will open windows. And doors opened, scholarships, mentors, and professors who believed in his vision. By his side was Amara, the girl who once told him she could be like his books. She reminded him to rest when his eyes burned. She reminded him to laugh when the weight of the world bent his shoulders. And one day, she asked him softly, "Chinedu, when you finish here, what will you do first?" He smiled, eyes distant. "I will go home. To the dust. To the mango tree. And I will build a school." Years later, dressed in a gown and cap, Chinedu stood before thousands on graduation day. His speech was not filled with fancy words. It was filled with truth. Chinedu with a soft voice said, "I came from nothing. I was mocked, beaten, and forgotten. But today, I stand not because I am strong, but because a poor widow named Mama Ifoma believed a hungry boy deserved a chance." And to every leader here today, I say, do not measure wealth by the size of your house, but by the number of lives your hands can lift. For what is the use of gold, if your neighbor's child cannot read? The crowd rose in thunderous applause. Many had tears in their eyes. But in one corner, Chief Okoro sat with arms folded, his face as dark as thunder. The day finally came. Chinedu returned home, not as the barefoot boy, but as a man. Children ran through the dusty streets shouting his name. Drummers beat their talking drums. Mama Ifoma's old hut was gone, but her memory hung in the air. At the foot of the mango tree, he stood silently, touching its bark. "Teacher," the children called him. But he whispered, "No. I am still a student. Mama Ifoma is the teacher." With the help of donors and allies he had met in the city, Chinedu began building what the village had never seen before, a school. Brick by brick. Nail by nail. The villagers joined him. The children carried water. The mothers cooked for the workers. Even those who once mocked him now came to help. For they had seen with their own eyes, the boy had become a man of destiny. And slowly, where once there was dust, walls began to rise. But pride does not let go easily. Chief Okoro, now frail and aging, came to see the rising building. He scoffed, leaning on his staff. "You think this school will change the world? You are still a beggar, Chinedu. Just a beggar with books," Chief Okoro said with bitterness in his heart. Chinedu looked at him calmly and replied, "A river does not boast because it is wide, Chief. It boasts because it gives water to the people. I am not here to boast. I am here to give." The crowd murmured in awe. Chief Okoro turned away, his power fading like a candle in the wind. Finally, the day came. The school stood tall, painted in bright colors, with words above the gate. Mama Ifoma Academy, knowledge for all. Children in clean uniforms marched proudly. Parents wept tears of joy. The drummers played. Chinedu stood before the crowd, holding back his tears. "This is not my victory. This is our victory. This is Mama Ifoma's victory. From the dust of this village, may every child now rise like the eagle." And when the ribbon was cut, the cheers echoed far beyond the village. Years passed. The academy grew. Children who once hawked on the street now read books under bright lights. Some became teachers. Some became doctors. Some returned to help build more schools. And whenever Chinedu walked through the compound, the children would run to him shouting, "Papa School! Papa School!" He would laugh and say, "No, my children. The school is yours. I am only the dust God used to plant a seed." And so, the orphan who once slept hungry under a mango tree built a school that fed thousands with knowledge. Chief Okoro's wealth faded, his houses crumbled. But Chinedu's legacy lived on in the minds and hearts of generations. Because in the end, true greatness is not measured by what we keep, but by what we give. This story is not just about Chinedu. It is about every child whose dream is bigger than their hunger. It is about every voice that whispers in the dark, "Do not give up." Remember, the greatest buildings rise from the poorest dust. And sometimes, the smallest boy becomes the greatest teacher. At the heart of Chinedu's story lies a truth that speaks beyond time and borders. Greatness does not begin in palaces, but often in the dust. A boy with no shoes, no books, and no roof over his head dared to believe in the power of knowledge, and through his courage, a whole village was transformed. Chinedu teaches us that true wealth is not measured in naira, dollars, or gold, but in the number of lives we uplift. When you share knowledge, when you give kindness, when you choose compassion over pride, you plant seeds that will outlive you. The world often forgets the poor, but the poor are not powerless. With faith, determination, and the support of even one caring hand, like Mama Ifoma's, a child can rise to rewrite the destiny of generations. Education is light. And light, no matter how small, will always chase away darkness. If a boy who once wrote on the ground with broken chalk could one day build schools and shape leaders, then truly, there is no dream too far, and no beginning too small. Let us remember, when we lift others, we rise ourselves. Dear viewer, if this story touched your heart, do not let it end here. Share this video so that others may be inspired. Comment below with what lesson you're taking away. Your words could encourage someone else. And most importantly, subscribe to this channel, so you never miss more emotional and powerful African folk tales like this one. Together, let's keep the flame of hope, kindness, and education burning, until no child is left in the dust.
Thank you for watching. God bless you.